I have a 3-year-old gelding that is the nicest horse in the barn. He rides like a seasoned 10-year-old. He was broke using spurs, but I am not wanting to wear them in case he turns into always needing spurs in order to respond. However, he is on the lazy side, especially when I'm trying to teach side passing. Any advice?
When it comes to riding the horses and spurs, I think people get a little bit of a misconception here about why we might want to ride a horse in spurs or when we'd want to ride a horse in spurs. Spurs is a very beneficial tool for you. It reinforces your leg, and it helps tremendously when it comes to lateral flexion exercises, getting the horses to side pass, two track, counter bend, things like this. We would go as far to say this: the secret to getting a horse really light, soft, and supple is it's really from your legs. It's coming from the rest of his body. You know, we always say the hands control the head and neck, and your legs control from the shoulders back. So the majority of the body that it needs to get control of, my legs are in charge of that department. Okay, so my first tip for you is I wouldn't rule Spurs out just because he's lazy, but I would say this. If he's naturally lazy and he's got to the point where he's just ignoring the spur, what I would do if I had your horse in training is I would go back and practice exercises like the cruising lesson. To practice, when I squeeze, I need to be able to get that horse to respect my bare heel. I'd pull my spurs off, but what I would use is I'd use the tail of my Makati rein, or I'd use the end of a split rein or a dressage whip as my reinforcement. So what I would do is I'd squeeze, ask him gently, cluck, I'm warning you, and then if he doesn't go, rather than kicking or spurring, I'd spank him on the butt, spank him behind the drive line and drive him forward. So we never use spurs to make a horse go. So if you sent me your horse and say, Jeff, he's so lazy, you're going to have to ride him with spurs. My first thought is, no. We need to get this gas pedal way better. We need to be working a lot more on that go button. When I squeeze, I need you to go and maintain speed. And the cruising exercise is exactly what teaches that particular concept. Now, if you told me, Jeff, I just don't want to ride in spurs. I don't like them. I don't feel comfortable with them. I don't feel like I ride with a secure seat, and I'm scared that I'm going to accidentally spur the horse all the time, so I just don't want to do it. Can you give me another way around this? The answer is yes. You can use the tail of the Makati rein to reinforce your leg. In the case of something like side passing, I'd highly recommend something like a dressage whip, okay? When you get a dressage whip, get one of those ones that's about 3 feet long. You know, don't get the little short ones that have like the little rubber hand on there. That thing's good for scratching your back, but it's not good for anything else, okay? You need something where you can keep 2 hands on the reins and still spank the horse on the butt while holding that whip. So a good one's about 3 feet long most of the time. And that will be my reinforcement. So let's take side passing as the example. I bring him up, whether he's on the fence or off the fence, and I put my cue on. I press in the middle of his rib with my leg. If he doesn't move off my leg, where I would normally roll my spur or possibly bump him with my spur, that's where I would tell him with my dressage whip. So I'd press. If he doesn't move off, I'd spank right behind my leg, whatever leg that you're pressing with, spank behind that leg until he moves off. Now, make no mistake, a spanker, the tail of the rein, the dressage whip can get exactly like the spur. You can absolutely dull a horse out and numb a horse up to any of those tools. The key is ask them like you don't have them. That's how this got started with the spur. That's how it got started, to where when you put your leg on, he doesn't move unless you have the spur. That's a dead giveaway that the person's always using them. That every time they cue them, they're putting that spur on. See, even when we ride a horse in spurs, we're going to ask him with the calf of our leg. So I'm going to, where the top of my boot shaft would be on a pair of Western boots, I'm going to press him with the calf of my leg first, then follow through with my spur. What you don't want to do is get in a habit of, well, he moves away from the spur, so why don't we just put the spur on? A horse will never get any lighter than the first amount of pressure that you put on. So if you start spurring, congratulations, you're going to have to spur forever. If you start spanking, if you start clucking or start waving your hand or whatever cue you use, that's going to be the cue forever. You're going to always at least have to do that. So the key is, whether you're going to ride him in spurs or not here, it really is irrelevant. You can create this exact same problem with any tool. But if you just decide I don't want to ride in spurs, a dressage whip would be my next best tool. I like a dressage whip a lot better than the tail of the rein, the Makati rein, because when we get into the other exercises where we're having to steer the horse and we have two hands on the reins, or something like side passing, I've got two hands tied up doing things, collecting the horse, shaping the horse, going left and right. When we're just cruising and we're in the fundamentals level, it's a little easier just to put one hand in the center of the rein, pick the spanker up, and spank from side to side. But once we get onto more advanced things, that's not really so much of an option. Okay? So my first advice to you would be go back. You need to get your gas pedal better, a lot better without your spurs by following through, squeeze, cluck, spank. And then either with your spur or without, when you go work on these exercises, ask him like you don't have it, ask him gently, and then build the pressure, whether that be the spur, the dressage whip, or your spanker, until you get the response that you're looking for, and then release the pressure. But let's just say, for example, I ask your horse to side pass, and I press with my calf, and that doesn't work, and I roll my spur, and that doesn't work, and then I bump with my spur, and that still doesn't work, and I reach out and just harpoon him, and I kick him with a spur, and that works. You can't say to yourself, well, okay, harpooning's what it takes. You just gotta reach out there and kick him hard enough and he'll move. Every time I go back to ask again, it's a new session in my mind. In my mind, I always say to myself, this time he'll be perfect. This time, that was just a fluke. When I put my calf on this time, he's gonna side pass this time. Even though I know he's probably not, you gotta ask him like he's perfect if you want him to get there. So I would not discourage you from ruling off spurs just because this horse is lazy at this particular stage. You can go back and clean a lot of that stuff up in the fundamentals level riding, and I think spurs would be highly beneficial for you. Well, there's virtually not a time moving forward past the bending at the walk exercise in the fundamentals where we're not going to ride in spurs. I would go as far as to say, I'm not as serious about getting a horse really soft and supple until I start using my legs, and a spur is going to be a big part of that, okay? So I would highly recommend that you ride in them long term if you ride with a secure seat, and as long as you apply the steps that we talked about earlier, okay? But if you insist on not, you can use a dressage whip as well.
Take your horsemanship to the next level. The No Worries Club Premium membership is your ultimate portal to complete your horse training. You'll have access to Clinton's complete training library, thousands of hours of step-by-step instructional videos. You'll master all aspects of horsemanship, from fundamentals to trick training. You'll have access to our exclusive social network that connects you with thousands of dedicated horsemen from around the world. You'll have the method available wherever you are and accessible through the web, your phone and tablets, or your favorite streaming devices. You'll receive 8 all-new training videos per year and the quarterly No Worries Journal, as well as access to the ever-growing video library, Q&As, performance horse series, blogs, and more. But that's not all. You also get free tickets to walkabout tours and priority access to the latest news coming from Down Under horsemanship, not to mention VIP pricing on all of Clinton's must-have training tools. So what are you waiting for? Unlock the ultimate access and jumpstart your training program today.